Let me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh, man, let's get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh, shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh, my goodness. I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh, my goodness. What's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Trees. I'm taking on 3 of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh, my goodness. Behind the back. Layup. Oh, and then he just do a reverse. He is in beast mode out here. I ain't got to look. It's falling. Oh, my goodness. This guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
I mix what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like, right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, very happy to be with you on the run, eating, Jory, up here at the Good Bucknell University. Shout out to Marcus Scales, formerly of Morgan State, who invited me up here to talk tomorrow about Dr. King. But in the interim, had a little time, so got a couple things I thought we could rap about a little bit tonight, and could check in with the remixers. Peace to you who are joining us here live. Definitely like, share, subscribe, put this in your socials. And to those who will see and hear this later, peace and welcome to you as well. And another spicy background is the plain wall of the, I guess this is like faculty guest housing or applicant guest housing. I'm not entirely sure, but but peace and good evening for sure. So real quick, before I get into what I thought we could discuss tonight, which is this new Rolling Stone article linked in the show description, for which I and some others you will recognize were interviewed. It turned out to be a fortuitous evening, because I get up here and I wasn't really paying attention to the overall schedule of everything being planned this week in sort of I think it's like a post-King holiday, pre-Black History Month moment that they're celebrating. But one of the speakers was someone who I had never met in person, but who I got to see present tonight. And I'll just share this from my Instagram. Dr. Jennifer Black, who was at Penn State University, I believe. She gave a really, really powerful talk tonight about Mumia, prisons, the meaning of prison, the possibility of movements. It was just really a fantastic presentation. And the only negative is she did not, and this is not a criticism, it's just a selfish disappointment. She did not want to allow me to record it. Which, for those who weren't there, that's just terrible because it was really great. So we'll see. Maybe we can reconnect and she'll be willing to do a version of it separately or share with us her notes if she's not. We didn't get a chance to really talk much about it, but it was about her reasons. It's none of my business. She didn't want it. It was cool, but I did try, just for the record. And but it was an incredible presentation. So I don't know how many of the people that were there tonight will be at my talk tomorrow, but she didn't do me any favors by being that good. I'll say that much. But no, it was very good. So shout out to Dr. Black, and really appreciate her work for a long time. And she talked a little bit about that tonight, her history in support of Mumia and other political prisoners. So again, shout out to her. All right, so I'll just share a little bit tonight of this new article that I'm honored to have been interviewed for, and I just have a few notes for it. The link to the whole article is in the show description, so we're not going to read over the entire thing. But this new piece by Timhotep Aku and Andre Guy, 50 years later, is hip hop still radical? In this latest edition of Rolling Stone magazine. After last year's Hip Hop 50 celebrations omitted much of the genre's activist history, some lifelong fans say rap no longer feels revolutionary. So I was just, this right here, and when we spoke for the interview, it was sort of made clear to me that this was going to be the direction of the article. And that's why they reached out. And I was like, yeah, this is fantastic. So I was like, this is great. Because obviously for anybody paying attention to me at all last year, I was just ranting endlessly about many of the flaws I saw in what was being done with this 50th anniversary for hip hop. And this was one of the key issues that I had, the erasure of hip hop activism and all the issues that so many were actively working around that are, as we'll talk a little bit about at least tonight, even worse off in terms of the conditions than they were at the time. So I was all in. So he had me at activist erasure, as they say. So, okay. So, again, without reading through the entire piece, the immediate and powerful contradiction that we've talked about here on a number of programs, not just me, but in a variety of ways, this contradiction of celebrating a 50th anniversary and a 50th birthday of hip hop, and this particular moment of KRS promoting, as he called him, the hip hop mayor, Eric Adams, New York City's mayor, despite all that Eric Adams represents in a continuity of abuse of Black and brown and working people and representing the police and all of this. So it's they immediately draw in on this contradiction that here's KRS-One, who had in what they call a surreal and absurd moment, this one who had done Sound of the Police and Black Cop and 30 Cops or More, a track I forgot about. And then here he comes talk about this is the hip hop mayor. Drawing the distinction, and I think this is a really important point that I should have highlighted initially, that here's KRS drawing the distinction between Ed Koch and Eric Adams, as if this is some sort of, again, break with that history instead of a continuity. And here's this person, KRS, who for our generation was legitimately
the culture's top thought leader,
coming back now to tell us that no, Eric Adams is something different. So I appreciated that they started with this immediate contradiction, and then went on to talk about through examples, Fat Joe and Lil Wayne and Ice Cube and these prominent MCs taking very right-wing and conservative stances and commercial opportunities and siding themselves with the Trumps, et cetera, and so forth, as opposed to, as they say in the next paragraph, you'd think the hip hop world would have something to say about this its anti-establishment roots on its birthday. Instead, we saw the opposite. And that's, yeah, you're talking about Ice Cube going on Tucker Carlson and all this. I mean, this is the question. You'd think the hip hop world would have something to say about its anti-establishment roots on its birthday. Instead, we saw the opposite. And this is where, and we've already played it here. I'm not even gonna do it again. But KRS just, and then you see the mayor say, you know, oh no, you gotta rhyme, basically saying like, no, you gotta dance, fool. It don't mean anything until you put the rhyme on it. So then I will say this. I know we talked for a long time. I know not all of it is ever going to make it into the interviews. I understand that going in. I do the best I can to summarize arguments, but you know, I sometimes struggle with that. So, but I will say this: I don't remember exactly what I said, but I appreciate in the two instances I am quoted. It seems in general like that's what I was saying, although I hope I in this instance, I'm not sure I would like to have thought I sounded a little more clear, but it's likely that I didn't. So, but I appreciate that I'm referenced for at least making the points about capitalism and colonialism. And am included here as part of the author's segue into talking a little bit more about some of the other problems that they have with this, with what's going on. So I at least appreciated that. Because they go in and some of the points that they end up making later throughout this article is that, for instance, that as they describe it, the celebrations last year for the Hip Hop 50th were sanitized celebrations. You know what? What was I saying about? Oh, right. And they include my points about capitalism, colonialism, and the argument around Sylvia Robinson as, on the one hand, you know what? I would have liked to make the point, I think, and I'm wondering if it's been made, if anybody has seen somebody make this argument, and I'm sure it's been made, please send this to me. But I think there's something to be said between the way hip hop remembers Sylvia Robinson and the way, broadly speaking, the Black capitalist and Black entrepreneurial community wants us to remember Madam C.J. Walker. That in each case, these are Black women who are promoted and championed as being strong Black women, business women who brought in made a lot of money for themselves and other Black people employed, blah, 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 blah. But I think there's a parallel argument to be made about how both of them also were just that, Black capitalist women who, to the extent possible, took advantage of a situation to make money for themselves while not politically or economically radicalizing the broader community or engaging with more radical politics, so on and so on and so forth. Although at this symposium this past weekend that I mentioned the other day, there was a sister who did some work who mentioned in her research finding some interesting backs and forth between Madam C.J. Walker and Booker T. Washington that I didn't remember being ever made aware of, where Walker was seemingly attempting to engage Booker T. Washington for some more, at least, left political purposes than I would have remembered or generally associated her with. So just to be fair, I may not have the full story there, but I'm wondering if that work has been done. I'll check the chat in a few minutes where the answer has already probably been posted, or I'll ask you all to repost it when I rejoin the chat here in a minute. But anyway, that just came to my mind. I didn't even think of that before, just literally this moment. So that said, that part is at least referenced in there, and I appreciated that. The article goes on to talk about and mention the latest back and forth, I'm not actually up to date with it, in fact, if it is a back and forth, but the latest with Yasin Bey, formerly known as Mos Def, criticizing Drake, and they point out, in which I would agree, that it's great to hear from Mos Def. And I just heard Corey Holcomb and his comedic crew, not that I should be listening to them for this anyway, but one of them was disrespecting Yassine Bey as if, you know, asking like what happened to him, as if he's lost his mind or something like that. And I'm like, nah, my man. And I actually commented on their channel. So shout out to their channel. And I said, Yassine Bey will be forever better at rhyming than any of them are at comedy. And I actually mean that with all due respect. Like they should just recognize that that's facts. So, but anyway. But here's an issue where I actually had some disagreement, and maybe I'll double back with the authors if I get the chance, or some of you will have some discussion for me on this. But I was disappointed is too strong a word, because I would expect it at this point, especially for a story going in this publication. But they reached out to, apparently, well, obviously Dan Charnas, the author of, among other things, The Big Payback, The History of the Business of Hip Hop. And he also authored something in of Dilla Time, the bestsellers. I didn't read Dilla Time, every time I hear it referenced, it's done with positive reviews. So it seems that a lot of people apparently like what he did in this homage to Dilla. I have some very biased, admittedly, some biased thoughts on that, but I have not read the work. The Big Payback, which I read at least in significant portions some years ago, I disagreed with, and particularly where he refers to hip hop as an American capitalist success story. So it makes perfect sense when I read in this story use of the phrase, first of all, hyper capitalism, which just I'm just always bothered by the need to add a preface to capitalism, as if capitalism itself is okay, and it's only bad when it's hyper or crony or some other prefatory something, and not so. But it's done so because I think for a particular reason, because I think ultimately Charnas and others either are not anti-capitalist or are not wanting to be overtly anti-capitalist, and which is logical for somebody whose work is as well promoted as his. But he makes what I think is a fatal flaw analytically, and I think that speaks to one of our core disagreements or differences here, that I think the use of the phrase hypercapitalism prefaces, pun intended. And that is, he says here, he says, and I made a note here. I have a petty note here. So my petty note is that when Dan Charnas is referenced, he's referenced here as the author of Dilla Time and The Big Payback. University author, New York University, and professor at New York University, and author of bestsellers Dilla Time and The Big Payback. And I'm just referenced as a professor at Morgan State University. Now, I understand my books are not bestsellers, and they are not part of the hip hop canon as Charnas is, but they are nonetheless books that have been authored by me. That, you know, so that was a petty note that I made here. But here's the fatal flaw analytically that I think is obviously more important. That, as it says here, you've always had a hyper-capitalist streak in hip hop because there's always been a sort of a Trump streak there, says Dan Charnas. According to Charnas, social consciousness and capitalist impulses have always coexisted in the culture in varying degrees. And as the business of hip hop grew, one set of values won out over the other. I think that hypercapitalism was the thing that ended up being rewarded, not just by the industry, but also by the audience. I think the audience tended to really like those tales of making money as the 90s gave way to the 2000s. It was like reading a Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. That book was horrible. I remember somebody showed that to me years ago, and I read through it in like a weekend, and it was just why in the world are you reading this? But see, this is the core point here, and it's something that I ended up talking about not too long ago, and specifically in reference to the work of Jhally, because Charnas has this exactly backwards. One, he misses well, part of it is that he misses by denying a full focus on what capitalism is, by reducing it to this it's only a problem if it's hyper capitalism. He denies what it all that is entailed. All right, I should have had it pulled up, and I can't find it, and I'm trying to talk while I find it. It's not going to work. But because Jhally does this, it was in the video with Hip Hop is Advertising, and I'll link it after this after I finish up here. I'll put the link in the show description if anybody wants to go back and find it. But what and I should have had it to play right here. Dang, that's a flaw. But what Jhally was showing in that clip was that if you go back and look at the history of advertising research, one of the key points that we lose sight of specifically today, and with frames of reference as is put together by Dan Charnas and others, is that the consumer is a creation of the industry. Consumer desires and wants are creations of the industry. There is not a situation where the consumer somehow organizes themselves, that all consumers organize themselves into body politics that can then deliver messages upwards to the culture industries and the advertisers to tell them what to reflect back to us in terms of our interests. This is what we're often told. We're told that the music industry, and we're told in films that the audience gets what it wants, what it asks for. Well, you all wanted the violence, and you all wanted the misogyny, and you all wanted the silly films, and you all wanted you didn't want to sit through a serious film. We would give you a serious, thoughtful film if you really wanted it, but you all don't want it. You want the explosions and the sex. So that's all we're going to give you. That's not how it works. It's the exact opposite. So when Charnas says here that somehow artists on their own and the audience on their own, remember the audience of 12 to 18-year-olds, that they somehow organize themselves into some powerful communicative body that could launch messages to the most powerful industries in the world and say, hey, we saw a little bit of that rap music and that hip hop that was encouraging us to be peaceful and to love one another and to peace, unity, and having fun and to dance and and we saw that, and we don't want that. We don't want that. We want extreme violence, conspicuous consumption. We want to sell your products. I think the audience tended to really like those tales of making money as the 90s gave way to the 2000s. So what this does, and this is where it's frustrating to see, and it's, again, I'm not criticizing the authors. I understand how this all works, but this is where it sometimes gets frustrating, and why I love the ability, if for no other reason, to the catharsis, which, as Mtume Gant reminded us, is not sufficient. I'm clear. I'm clear. Catharsis is not sufficient, but sometimes is good. But to just be able to say, look, this is where the context of my argument and other arguments are lost, and it's frustrating, because audiences didn't just by the 2000s automatically magically decide they wanted tales of money making. This is what's frustrating. The removal of hip hop activism from the history of hip hop is I think parallel to the erasure of the discussion of so much of the hip hop journalism and hip hop scholarship that has been produced, that again is not the mainstream cookie cutter nonsense, but is something that is actually revealing. And if we were to somehow be able to properly engage that work in those histories, we would see that the audience by the 2000s wasn't somehow an accidental creation. And I know Charnas talks about this in his broader work in a different frame, but it's because of the 1996 Telecommunications Act. It's because of the increased consolidation that occurs around that, the ability for corporations, which are themselves legal fictions that allow in decreasing elite, an increasingly decreasing number, right? I love saying it that way, but an ever decreasing number of people, mostly ruling rich white men, to rule in anonymity and to influence us in anonymity. That's what was going on that allowed for, in conjunction to what Jhally and others have talked about in terms of advertising history, to work in shaping society and to shape a consumer environment. It's the work of the late great Greg Tate, who was talking about in the early 2000s, in fact, about why are we seeing this rise of 50 Cent and crack cocaine drug stories as real life crack cocaine use and violence decreases in the Black community. So in other words, we weren't hearing anymore about what was happening in real people's real lives. We were hearing the tales of the past retold again and in the current, for the sake of denying all of the evolving neo-soul and Black radicalism of the Yassine Beys and others whose work had to be negated. So it's just I just think that frame is just so frustrating. So what else did I write here? He gets wrong the creation of audiences and how these conclusions are created in part by destroying the popularity of radical music. So he gets it totally backwards. And then the article goes on from there. The authors talk about the radicalism of the music and the political prisoners that become the focus. And they make reference to George Jackson and Black August. They talk a little bit to Monifa Bandele about Malcolm X grassroots movement and so on and so on. And but again, there's not enough attention in this article, or certainly throughout even the whole year or so of the so-called birthday celebration, for a discussion of why those efforts were not built upon, or why they were negated, reacted to by a consolidating industry, a reforming and rebranding colonialism. So one thing that I thought I would just do very quickly, I was going to do this as a whole separate thing, but I'm just going to just quickly interject it right here. So there's this, because what my point is that the negation in the late 90s and early 2000s of that radical resurgence of the dead presidents and black stars, et cetera, and so forth, is again, they don't even talk about, this is what was so, they don't talk about the Smack Fests and the Hot 97 and the MS Communication and all the fight against all of that. They don't talk about any of that. And I know this article can't do it, but I'm saying the whole anniversary left that stuff out. And what part of what those fights were struggling to prevent was what we see today. So my algorithm ended up introducing me a year or so ago to this at least formerly big time music producer named Rick Beato. Some of you have probably heard of him. whose YouTube channel is enormous, and it's fascinating. And he from time to time does this thing where he talks about the top 10 songs and how bad or good they are. And it's not as much of the old white man get off my lawn thing as I thought it would be when I first saw it. He gives music a thoughtful ear, or a producer's ear. He knows how to play all the instruments. But he's looking at it in the top 50 and on Spotify, and the top 10 on Spotify to assess from his point of view where the music is going in terms of the quality of the music. My point, not wanting to even get into that, is who owns the music and how did the music get to be in the top 50? So, and the point I'm getting at is that after all those years of decades of struggle and scholarship and journalism, the unheralded scholarship and journalism and activism around the corporate dominance and reshaping and rebranding of hip hop, negation of radical hip hop. The whole point of my initial free mix radio, still my favorite project, mixtape radio project, was to show how much great music was still being produced, but was never on the radio, never getting airplay. And then what do we see today? So I just, and I won't go through the whole thing as I had intended to, because it's in all honesty, it's sort of just an easy exercise. The simple point is that I went through the top 10 the other day of Spotify's most popular songs, and all of them, there was one song on here. I think it's this La Diabla song. There's 9 of the 10 are all owned by Warner Brothers, Universal, or Sony, which is the exact same situation that we were dealing with and struggling against 20, 30 years ago. This is why. So again, and straight up, all jokes aside, I don't care how good Jack Harlow's music is or 21 Savage music. I don't know any of these songs. So this for me has nothing to do with that. These could literally be, honestly, straight up, like 21 Savage could have dropped the best bars. This could be the best song ever. Jack Harlow could be, I don't even know I'm not even entirely sure what he does, but this could all be the best stuff ever. This Mitski stuff, this Flo Milli track, Never Lose Me, this could be phenomenal. Ariana Grande could be out singing. She sang at Aretha's funeral, right? She could be out singing Aretha on this song. I know that's blasphemy. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. Now you see I'm just playing. But my point, the point I'm saying all this for is that it doesn't matter to me how good or bad this music is. It only matters to me that in the context of the political and, in this case, media environment that we have, that they are the top songs, that these are the songs that are there. How did they get there? What is the process by which they got there? And why is it at the end of the day, we're talking about songs that are the most popular apparently in the world or in the country right now, and again, are all owned by the exact same handful of corporations themselves, with the exact same ties to bigger conglomerates, with bigger operations internationally, and all now connected to an even more incestuous and fewer number of dominant platforms, streaming in this case platforms, that determine all of this. So it's like, so when we were, and not so much me, but when my generation, me a little bit, my generation was really fighting against the corporate takeover of hip hop, so much of the argument was, we don't want a handful of corporations to have control over the content and the ownership. And here we are in 2024, and it's worse than ever. as bad as Hot 97 is, and its dominance, not just in the New York and East Coast area, but in terms of setting the trend for radio across the country, as consolidated as the radio environment was under Clear Channel after the 96 Telecommunications Act, as consolidated as all of that was, it's nothing compared to now where Warner and Sony and UMG can put money into to Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, or whatever the hell else, and have even more control over more of the market, or access of the market access to the music, with a more incestuous relationship with the dominant record companies that own it all. So I mean, I love that the article is in this case framed and pointed in the right direction, but I can't help but just notice that it can't by itself address all of these remaining contradictions. So, all right, just a little bit more here, then I'll jump into chat and see if anybody has any. Right. So I've made a note here, but the perspective here misses and misses it and describes the corporate takeover as being driven by artists. Imagine that. They were neo-colonial conduits for the theft themselves, developed over preceding decades. So again, unfortunately, let's see, where was it? There was another reference to artists sort of not sticking with the program. So here it says here, but while artists who participated in Black August were broadening their perspectives to think about social justice and human rights around the world, a larger segment of artists were sharpening their focus on hip hop as an industry. The late 90s and early 2000s gave us the rise of Jay-Z and Rockefeller, Murder Inc., Cash Money, No Limit, and a slew of hybrid artists, business people who began to shift the music industry power balance in favor of artists and homegrown labels to cash in on a booming music industry. This I disagree with entirely. So that's why I made this note that said the perspective misses and describes the corporate takeover as being driven by artists. No, they were but neo-colonial conduits for the theft themselves that had been developed over the preceding decades. So Jay-Z's rise, the rise of Rockefeller, is related to his becoming more involved with Def Jam. Remember, at one point in the early 2000s, Jay-Z said, I want to run UMG, which owned Def Jam. And I said at the time, I know nobody heard it because I was in my basement screaming at the TV, but I said, you'll never own Universal Music Group. And not because he's not smart enough or talented enough, but because he didn't understand what Universal Music Group's relationship is to this colonial project. Universal Music Group, as the biggest music company in the world, is not here to be run by an artist for the sake of paying it, getting payback for what the industry did to the Cold Crush. It's here, especially now, after reading Ori's work and all this, it's a wrap. It's there. It's so clear they're here to manage the potential threat of a colonized population who's not here to be turned into to be let loose. But my point is that the rise of Rockefeller, Murder Inc., and all these other ones. Look at what old boy was saying about Murder Inc. Irv Gotti. Look at his arguments and battles with Lear Cohen. Look at what he had to go through with Lear Cohen to get where he got. And then look at how easily it was all threatened, if not fully rug pulled from him, when he didn't have either requisite political power or legal authority or so on and so forth. I mean, this is unbelievable. Where is No Limit now? No Limit, Master P is going on The Breakfast Club to sell cereal. And that's not a diss. That's saying you can't tell me that. My point is, this was not because artists had decided something and were going to change the industry. No, the industry was using these artists to negate the Black August trajectory that existed in other areas. They saw, we've seen it. I know people, and again, I can't wait to look at the chat here in a minute, but I know you all have been there with me. We probably didn't even know each other. Some of you were with me in the summer of 2000 in Central Park. I will never forget that. We saw what happened there that day when Pharaoh and Mos and Common, the old Common, were doing their thing. We know what was happening in the park that day. We know what was happening when we saw Dead Prez hit those stages. I saw it from Cuba to the University of Maryland. From the blackest of Black African spaces in Cuba to the whitest of College Park spaces in the University of Maryland. And everybody was ready to turn a car over for the revolution. So you can't tell me, you just can't tell me that this was then artist driven and audience driven. So I just totally disagree with that. I think this misses the point. The rise of Diddy and Bad Boy Records and Russell Simmons, again, they even make the point. They even end up making my point. Bad Boy Records gets valued at $250 million. By who? By Forbes. By who? Those who would eventually buy it. Russell Simmons sells Def Jam to Universal Music Group. That's what Black business is. That's what all small business is in capitalism. Get big enough to get bought out. This idea of generational wealth and we're going to have power and this, that, and the third. No, you're going to have generational wealth you hand down to your family at best. But this whole, so again, I'm just saying that the point is the industry as organized ruling elites responded, negated the potential threat, reorganized themselves, bought out the big ones here, there, the third, and promoted every other form of music to the point where, again, as the decades of research from radical communication studies and Africana studies and other academic studies to the radical journalism, to the radical activism for decades, going back 100 years, have been showing how culture industries have shaped popular opinion for the to satisfy the ruling elite. I just had started and get to finish Moose's new piece on Hood Communist about the materialist guide to media studies or something like that. I think I butchered the title. But Marx in the 1850s is talking about the superstructure and the role culture is meant to play in shaping public opinion for the ruling elite. So people have been doing this for a long time. So the idea, and it had been done within hip hop journalism and hip hop activism and hip hop scholarship from the 90s on. But that has been my point. The narrative that Charnas and others have been used to develop about hip hop history has been turned against all of this analysis and used to make an interpretation of what's happened almost impossible. There's some discussion of what I did like. There's a discussion of some I guess lesser known MCs and their radical politics, connecting their work to the struggles in Palestine, which reminded me of something I read in the late James Spady's work about the mixtape and how the mixtape was referenced as something that itself was specifically connecting Black people's struggle here in the US to those of the colonized world and specifically the people of Palestine. There's reference here appropriately to Jay-Z being brought in to brand wash for the NFL post Kaepernick. There's a discussion of this mass media. This was just disgusting. Mass appeal media. Oh man. and their relationship to the Hip Hop Museum, branding hip hop at 50, claiming that they're effectuating, quote, effectuating real change. And of course, they've signed themselves to Universal Music Group. So they, I mean, I even looked it up. They took their name from of course, Gang Starr's Mass Appeal and turned it, I mean, it's frustrating, disappointing. And they said, the owner said, because he trademarked Hip Hop 50, he said, regardless of the trademark, regardless, the trademark gave them a controlling stake. No, the authors of this article said that despite their claims that they didn't mean to gatekeep the culture by trademarking Hip Hop 50, the authors of this article rightly say that regardless, the trademark gave them a controlling stake in the language used in hip hop's generational celebration. Artist Mavi is quoted as saying, hip hop is so open source. I like that, actually. And then I did appreciate, I won't front, I appreciated that my quote, something for me closes out the article. I don't remember saying this, but I'll assume I would, but it sounds like something I would have said. And so I'm, like I said earlier, I didn't like the way I sounded then, but this quote sounds much better. But yeah, if we can all come together around breakdancing the mixtapes, great. But at some point, we got to have a question about why are all these people still poor? Why are they still getting killed by the police? Why are they still all in jail? When do we get to do that? When does the love of the people and all this unity get to solving the actual conditions? If you love me out of poverty. Don't love my art and just leave me in chains. Like, God damn. I liked it. I would have. But I want to add something else. I hope I'm gonna go. I hope I can blame the authors and that they just left this out, and that I actually did say this at the time or something to that effect. But I want to say so. I want to wrap what I have to say tonight with how Dr. Jennifer Black concluded her comments earlier tonight regarding Mumia. And broadly speaking, the point being that one of the other ways that we know hip hop hasn't solved anything, as have all other movements to this point not solved everything, is the existence of political prisoners. The fact that Mumia is still locked up, the fact that others are being let out just in time to die, the fact that Leonard Peltier is still locked up, the fact that Jamil Alameen is still locked up, Kamal Siddiqui, Asada's on the run. I mean, all of these things are still happening is proof that this great victory hasn't occurred. If we needed one more bit of evidence for that. So, but okay, that's it. That's what I had. But again, I appreciate whatever disagreements I have, whatever issues, whatever here or there. The overall frame of the article, I love it. I hope somehow it intervenes on what people saw all last year with this sort of just really troubling celebration. And shout out to them. And if you get a chance, check out the link in the show description to read the article for yourself. Let me know if I got anything wrong or you feel I misrepresented anything. And of course, you can definitely
put it in the comments.
All right, so let me jump in the chat. If I missed anything you want me to definitely respond to, let me know. If otherwise we can break camp and rest up for the Remix Morning Show. And yes, thank you, Big Teal, A Materialist Guide to Media Literacy. Right on, it is past my bedtime. But I'm away from home, so what's up, Paul? Yeah, I mean, who gives a fuck about a goddamn Grammy? Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. What's up, Piper? The youth love Flo Millie. They tell me she's radical. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard a word. And yes, Rockefeller is a play on Rockefeller. Yeah. And that's who you named your crew after, as Nas asked. I mean, Jay-Z has always been clear to this point. I mean, they picked the right one. He's talented and he's always been clear. I'm here to make money. Quaker Anarchist, thank you. Should we all quit? Should we quit all the music movie subscriptions for our boycotts now? Have YouTube Premium and Pandora. Otherwise, have quit everything. I don't know. I don't have any. Everything I would say to that would be a contradiction. I don't. And I tend to think that boycotts are not at this point. I think boycotts are less effective at the point we're talking about international conglomerates. I don't know that boycotts would be effective. Yeah. Yeah, rest in power to Greg Tate. And man, the biggest regret of my so-called media career is that we did this great interview with Dr. Fedora Hadley and Greg Tate up in Brooklyn, and apparently the tape didn't work or the recording didn't work. We got in the car on the way home, and the crew I was working with said, "Whoops." Big Teal, I wonder if Dr. Ball agrees with the article's view on Sylvia Robinson selling hip hop to make money and not to free black people. Yeah, that's my point. Yeah. Yeah, she wasn't a radical. She was trying to make money. And if from what I remember, if you go back and read about her history, I mean, she was struggling with her own music career. She was trying to figure out how to stay in the music business, and sort of stumbled upon this thing happening. And because of her situation, I think she was divorcing or there was something, but I think a husband, oh man. But the timing of it afforded for her the opportunity to sort of take advantage of the moment. DJ RBI, my man, hey, any chance to hang with you, man? It would be an honor, and any chance to hang out and work with you is I'll take it. Minister Paul Scott, one more thing. I was writing during that time. Do you believe that there was classism and elitism within hip hop journalism during that period? That's a good question. My immediate answer is that I think there was less elitism and more of a desire to defend hip hop against what was perceived as the elitism of the black bourgeoisie trying to suppress it. And that's where I think there were some key and important points missed, particularly about the relationship of corporations, the willingness to be critical of the C. Dolores Tuckers, but to side with Warner Brothers. I think that contradiction got missed at the time. But I'd have to think about that. I don't know if you see it differently, but it seemed to me a lot of journalism was being produced from the perspective, at least from a certain class position, maybe not radical per se, and certainly mostly owned and controlled by white gatekeeping outlets. But that's a good question. I don't know. Oh man, Paca's DMV is still. Oh man, I got back late. I missed that. My bad. Look like I have a tan. No, it's just the lighting. Yes, sir. Let me know anytime. I'd be happy to do that. Was media fear-mongering about rap music worse in the 90s or the 2000s? That's another good question. That's a really good question. I don't know if it was worse. I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe it's just been consistently bad. It felt like it was maybe worse, but then again, I was much younger. It felt like it was even worse in the 80s when hip hop hadn't even been accepted as something that was more than a fad. But I don't know. That would be a good... Man, thank you, man. Appreciate you. But you know, I'm saying, you know, I'm spoiled, man. I sat in small radio studios watching DJ RBI and Two Tone Jones and other geniuses spinning all this music. And you'd be like, hold up, man. There's something clearly going on here, because there's a lot of beautiful music that we're not hearing anywhere else but on WPFW. So, okay. All right, good people. I appreciate you coming through. Those who will see this later, thanks to you as well. Big shout out to you, DJ RBI. And I definitely look forward to linking up again. I think I thought I saw Rob Batts in here earlier. Your doctor came through. Shout out to you. Anyway, peace, everybody. If you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say, catch you throughout these BPM streets. Make sure you have the bell rung so you don't miss anything. And like, share, subscribe, get some merch, all those good things. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like. Thanks again, everybody. Peace, 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 peace.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I...
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.